Hello and welcome to Landscape Photography World, the podcast for everyone passionate about landscape photography. I'm Grant Swinburne and I'll be your host on this show, talking to landscape photographers about their motivations, likes, dislikes and creative processes. This time I'm talking to Jenna Dixon about her amazing Canadian landscape images. Jenna has always loved the outdoors, but it wasn't until moving to the mountains that she realised her passion for raw, remote and rugged landscapes. Originally from Manitoba, Jenna moved to the Canadian Rockies 2 years ago with her camera in tow and has since logged thousands of kilometres trekking through the backcountry of numerous national parks around Alberta and British Columbia. These experiences have left her more grounded and appreciative of Canada's natural beauty, in which she hopes to share with the world. With the Rockies as a stunning backdrop, there's no adventure too grand. As an adventure and travel photographer, expedition-style exploration is the way that she gets off the beaten path and into the rawness of nature. It's Jenna's goal to capture the unique and captivating stories of individuals that love to venture further and push their limits in the outdoors. Jenna works part-time in photography, balancing that with a busy schedule as a travelling nurse, after finding her community amongst the grand landscapes of the Banff National Park. We discuss how photography came to be such a passion and how she's started to grow her photography career, along with a whole lot more. I hope you enjoy the show. Hi Jenna, welcome to Landscape Photography World. How's your day going?
It's going very well, thank you. I appreciate you having me on today.
Thanks for agreeing to be a part of it. Why don't you start with who you are and what you do and why you do what you do?
Okay, well, my name is Jenna Dixon and I am a landscape and adventure photographer, and I'm based in the beautiful Canadian Rockies of Canmore, Alberta, originally from a very small town in rural Manitoba. The photography journey was not a clear-cut one, so it's been a transition and kind of a journey in itself, but it's been really exciting and, a story of progression, I guess, and growth. And today I work with commercial brands. I work with tourism boards, mostly in Canada right now with, the kind of pause of the world, although things are starting to open up. So hoping to go international soon. And I do print publications, a little bit of NFTs and all the rest. So, yeah.
Nice. Why don't you take me back to where it all began and talk a little bit about your earliest photography memory?
Sure. My earliest photography memory. Do you want me to tell you the whole story of how I got to photography or just the short version?
Hey, we've got plenty of time. So yeah.
Okay. I just think it's there's so many layers to this story, and when you look back and you sort of reflect on all the smart parts that come to the sum of where I am now, it's kind of cool to look back on, because it definitely wasn't, photography in itself, something that I really sought after right away. It wasn't this clear-cut vision. And so to take it back, I feel like I've had three main passions in my life, photography being one, and I'll tie that in once I get to the other parts. But when I was growing up in rural Manitoba, my first kind of driving force was sport. I was full in on that. I was cripplingly shy. I was very timid, and I had a lot of social anxiety, and sort of threw myself into sport where, the actions could speak louder than the words itself, and I could really put my head down and focus. I never really had the loudest voice. I didn't want to be involved in drama. I just wanted to work hard and try to be the best at whatever I could be. And, those years and the payoff, I ended up getting a full ride scholarship to the States, where I played multiple sports in university. And I sort of had this path laid ahead of me of being an athlete. I was looking at playing internationally. And that sort of all came to a halt when my mom actually got sick. And so I ended up leaving the States and coming home to support, to be there for my parents. My mom's the most important person in my life, and I don't regret that for a single moment, but I feel like it really changed the course of where my life was headed and what I thought was going to be. And so at that time, none of my studies translated back into Canada, to just different systems. It was kind of a nightmare. And, where I came back in, the university degrees that were offered to me were quite limiting, just being in the small kind of, rural area. And so I chose nursing, which I really feel like I was meant to do.
Okay, cool.
But the main reason I chose it was for the travel aspect and the fact that you could go anywhere and always have a job. And that sort of takes me into my next passion, which was travel. I finished off my university degree. I worked for my first year. I saved up all my money, and then I went on this solo backpacking trip all over across the world. I spent every single penny and came home like broke. But it was the most incredible experience I ever had in my life. And, talk about putting yourself in this period of discomfort, especially being someone that really needed to challenge myself to come into myself to gain that confidence and self-assurance. I really felt like that trip did it for me. And so I ended up going back to work because I needed to, but I would either quit or I would work and bunch all my shifts together to be able to experience sort of that international travel and just the way that it made me feel. And, I never really felt like I fit into the constraints of the regular social, especially where I lived. It was very conservative, and people would work, get their pension and, get the house and have children. And that was sort of it. People didn't really travel a lot. And so I was a bit out of the norm. And I would always get, the pressure from my parents. Well, maybe you should settle down a little bit, or maybe you should really focus on what this career means for you. And so I did. I tried it. I ended up getting into an operating room course. So with that, I would take a year's worth to be able to achieve this degree. And as a result, I would pay back 2 years of my life, not my life, but 2 years back of my career at that hospital, sort of like a retainership program.
Yep.
And I think it was at this moment that I really felt like, okay, I felt really stuck. And I was in this very transitional period, I believe, in my life where, things just weren't quite adding up. And I was kind of getting sick of doing everything that everybody told me to do. And I was like, what is it that you really want to do? And I would have these deep contemplation moments where I'd sit out at this hometown lake. It's Riding Mountain National Park in Manitoba, if you ever want to look it up, but it is insanely beautiful. And being in Manitoba, we would always have this green band on the horizon at night, which is the Northern Lights.
Yeah.
And, I'd never shot a camera before. I never thought about picking one up. And it wasn't until I would sit there and look at those lights and wonder, like, what would it take to be able to capture that? And so I ended up going out. I bought my first camera. It was the Canon SL1. And I think I Googled a tutorial online or something, how to capture Northern Lights or shoot astrophotography. And, it's funny because I clicked the shutter and just seeing the back of that screen, it went from 0 to 100 in an instant. And it was almost like this obsessive, I don't even know how to describe it. I was literally obsessed with chasing landscapes. And, I was still quite young at the time, late 20s, early 30s. And we were working 9 to 5 and partying on the weekends. And as soon as I got that camera in my system, that's all I did. I just totally changed. Wow. And so thankfully, that was the last year of that retainership program. And as soon as I finished, I quit my job. I bought a van, I rigged it out, and I moved west. And so I ended up travel nursing. And so that not only gave me the, financial stability and the job security that I needed, but it also gave me the flexibility to really focus in on my photography career. And that's sort of where I developed and honed in my skills and what I love to capture. And landscapes, of course, became that. I kind of dabbled with couple different genres, but always came back to these mountainous landscapes. And, I ended up moving to Canmore, Banff area, which is where I am today. That's where I found my home base. And, surrounded by this incredible community now. They're all creatives and all like-minded individuals and really support one another. And so I really get to sort of, combine all 3 passions now. And I'm not in sport necessarily competing against teams, but now I sort of compete against myself, and I use these mountains as sort of these extreme sports and adventure to tell a story through photography, and I get to travel as well. So it's been really fun. Yeah.
So what is it about the landscape that really spoke to you that, I guess you mentioned that you went from 0 to 100, what exactly was it? Was it just a feeling? Is it the mountains? Was it,
I think
experience?
initially it was the feeling. It was really the feeling. And for me, there was always something about being up in the middle of the night. I mean, when you're young, you just do it anyways, but
Sure.
I loved it. It was, this place where everything was silent and I could sit with my thoughts and, capture the night sky or the scene in front of me. And I just never really thought that was possible before, to, see something with your own eyes and then see it back within a screen and know that you're the one who captured that. And I went into wildlife next, and then it was landscapes. And I think for me with landscapes, that really came to be when I moved out west, and just some of the places that you can get to, that are off the beaten path. And
Sure.
I think for me, the adventure and sort of the journey of these places is what captivates me the most. I did it before I was a photographer. Sorry. I did it through travel. And so for me now, that is like to be able to use that camera as an extension or a tool, to be able to bring these landscapes back is, that's the thing that I love to do the most, I think.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So what is it that you're still chasing, I guess, in your photography?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. I don't think that there's one particular thing that I'm chasing. I feel like I'm always chasing. And for me, to speak for like motivation. I think when I was younger, not to say that I wasted time, but I feel like I really missed out on a lot of experiences and opportunities just because I was too scared to say yes. And so when I finally got over that, and when I finally was able to, I guess, pursue the passion without letting anything else stand in my way, I think that's sort of the motivating force, is that, I really want to, I just don't want to waste any time. I don't want to waste any more time. I just want to go for things. Yeah. So I don't know. I think for me, it's like, as I get more versed and as you start to capture more, where I am at the moment, I'm looking into mountaineering courses. I've taken all the glacier rescue and crevice rescue courses. And so it's more about getting deeper and higher and, sort
getting
of
to
really
those places no one else goes.
Yeah. And I think, not only do I hope to make them more accessible for people that may not be able to see them for themselves, but there's just something about that mind-body connection, and being able to be in those situations, in those landscapes with like the elements, like winter is actually my favorite time to shoot, the most uncomfortable time probably ever. But I don't know, there's something really raw and like wild and just really, I come back with a sense of accomplishment and just knowing that I saw something that nobody else probably has seen before. I love that feeling.
Nice.
Yeah.
So what's your approach to photography in relation to, recording an experience versus trying to create art out of it?
What's the process?
No. What's your approach? I mean,
my approach.
Are you out there to create just record an experience and say, okay, well, this is as true a record of what I can, what I saw at the time, or are you leaning more towards making it art, or is it a blend of both?
I think it's a blend of both for me. I am very inspired by those people that have like a certain vision in mind and that use post-processing to, to use it to the full degree that they can to come up with this creative vision, to produce something otherworldly. But for me, I feel like I really love to keep the landscapes almost true to scene. And so I do work with a lot of color, a lot of split toming. But the approach is more like almost documentative. And so, yes, I hope to achieve an art. Yes. And that is like the destination in itself, or that shot that you sort of have that intention towards. But then I also love to capture the journey and the moments in between. And so I often come back with a myriad of photos and with different feels and different effects. And so I think that comes to play with, sort of like the print and publication aspect. I love to write. And so, I really like to be able to tell the story and to be able to showcase the journey as well. And then, maybe the destination or the art per se of what, I hope to achieve and come back with that's more of a print per se, or maybe something that I use of more personal value. So yes, two different sort of methods and approaches, but they all sort of blend into one, I think.
Okay. Are you trying to make unique scenes or just a more distinctive scene within the landscape genre?
I feel like a bit of both as well, because oftentimes if I am sort of, asked to go out on different circumstances to capture a certain scene, of course you are producing for that. But I think that there's joy in both. I think that there's joy in capturing the scene, that might be, especially here in the Rockies. I mean, nothing's really that foreign unless you go deeper, of course, but it is something special to have in your portfolio of these places, that are quite popular, but maybe you get them at the best light because you live here and you're able to go to these places time and time again.
Yeah.
But I feel like too, when you are going to some places deeper, you have to go a multiple amount of times. And so when you visit these places and you see them at all times of the year in all different light, different opportunities and different landscapes, sections of the landscapes start to speak to you. And so, yes, I feel like I do both. Again, I know that's a little bit of a, I feel like I should be one or the other, but I honestly love to do both. So
it honestly doesn't have to be both. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
When I am going into these deeper and sort of more backcountry areas where they're a little bit tougher, I feel like those scenes are naturally just not as common. And so, yes, those will be more unique. But with the rise of social media and Instagram and everything else, nothing is that unique for that long before somebody else tries to get there. And so I guess that's the goal of always trying to push further, is to continue to come back with those unique shots as well.
Definitely. How would you describe your style?
It's so funny because people that look upon your work will often say you have a certain style. They say that to me, and I feel like my style is always evolving. And even looking back a couple of years ago, it's changed. But I think what people say they see as more of a consistent is likely the colors that I bring out. Mm-hmm. Like I said before, I do a lot of split toning, and I do work a lot with color just to portray, I think, the emotion of how I felt when I was there. Yeah, right. And so, some scenes come back quite moody and some scenes come back quite colorful. Of course, it depends on weather as well, but I have probably a little bit of a soft or more dreamy effect than too sharp. I'm probably not, the most technical. Mm-hmm. I know the technique and I know, the fundamentals, but I really try to remain creative in not sticking to, what should be or what has been taught to be. And right. So, yeah.
So is that I guess, you've got your rules, as people call them, your rules and golden ratio and all the rest of that. Do you deliberately go out and try to break those, or is it more circumstantial that you'll go, okay, well, the feeling in this one really does need to break that rule?
For me, it's a feeling. It's not that I necessarily try to break the rules. I think I just really try to let the landscape speak to me. And so what I see in that moment is what I try to achieve, and depending on what you're focusing on at that particular time.
How much do you think where you've decided to live has influenced the way you shoot as opposed to what you shoot? Obviously, mountain landscapes, lakes, forests, etc., are in abundance in that area. But how much do you think that's influenced and that landscape has influenced the way you actually shoot?
I would say it just influences everything. Being from Manitoba, it was like the flattest place in Canada. I mean, I shot landscapes there, but they didn't necessarily excite me. And I feel like here, there's no abundance. There's an abundance, of that excitement. I'm always inspired. I look out the window and I see mountains every day. And I just, I wonder what's behind there, or, what do you see from the top? And so, I feel like when you tie in adventure and sort of the journey in itself, I feel like, that's the influence. And so I've traveled, I wanted, when I first started, I was like, I'm going to be this travel photographer. And I did travel, and I went to all these places, and I used a drone, and I've shot beaches and everything else. But there's something about the mountains that really speak to me. I don't know if there's a curiosity or an inspiration with them, but they're my favorite thing to shoot in the world. And so now when I plan trips, I'm more, cold weather environments, mountainous regions. Those are sort of what really appeal to me, especially if I want to be intentional about the work I'm creating. So that's sort of where I'm at the moment.
So are you into photography full time now, or are you still working in nursing?
I am.
How do you balance the two if you are?
At the beginning, it was pretty challenging to balance. I'm not going to lie, because, I do shoot a lot of astrophotography. And so when you're up all night and you have to work the next morning, it's difficult. But it's interesting because I actually feel like the pandemic sort of put a hold on some things for me. Sure. So the way that travel nursing works is that you will sign up for different contracts of varying lengths. And so you are working full time and most times more than that during the period that you're there. Mm-hmm. But then you have sort of your own, when you're finished, you kind of can do what you like. And so that has left me here in Canmore, but working casual per se at a hospital or at an operating room. And so I can sign up for shifts, but I don't have a specific line. And so it allows things to be flexible. Yeah. Right. But when the pandemic hit, all of those shifts were canceled. And so being in the operating room, it was an interesting sort of state because they shut down essentially to make, room for beds for, sick individuals that needed them. They couldn't have the stress of complications or whatnot on the healthcare system. And so, even being a nurse at that stage, I lost a lot of work, but it really allowed me to focus in on my photography business. And that's sort of where it really blossomed, because I finally allowed myself the freedom and just, to go full in. And so today I'm about 80% photography and about 20% nursing. I will still travel on occasion, but mostly that is I will actually combine that almost with a tourism stint. So I'll go and work. I'll get my accommodations taken care of through my job. I will work full time for a certain amount of time. And so I'll have that financial backing. Yeah. And then I'll often partner while I'm there, gain those connections with either tourism or different places around and be able to sort of work as a photographer afterwards, which is really exciting. But I don't know, I've held on to both for the time being, but I think the way that things are going right now, it probably won't be long that, before I go full-time photography. Okay. It's just right now, I like the balance of both. I like the creative, part of being your own boss and the entrepreneurial, business. But I love the high achieving and the brilliant minds that you find in healthcare. So I really desire and really love both. Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like you got the best of both worlds.
For now. Yeah.
So in terms of your photography work, what's the trajectory that you see yourself going on? It sounds like that at some point you're going to potentially put nursing behind you and get into this full time and go with it. How do you see yourself sort of? I mean, obviously the pandemic played a part, but how do you see that playing out in terms of the decision as to when to pull the pin on the nursing?
I think it's just going to be a feeling. I think I'll know it. I'm kind of getting to that place now where it's getting harder and harder to go into work or to, accept, shifts or shortages that they're requiring me to sort of fill. Because once you sort of, get to a certain point in your business, it really requires you to be full in. And so I don't want to have to say no to opportunities that are coming in the photography world. And so when there becomes that sort of competition or that, ultimatum, one versus the other, I know I'll pick photography. And so I feel like it's coming very soon.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
I'll look forward to seeing that getting announced on Twitter soon then. So what about the structure of how you've sort of started to build the business? What are the main elements that you're focusing on? What sort of work are you taking on, and how do you see that sort of playing out and building for you?
Well, I met my partner here actually in Canmore, and he is full time and he is a videographer. And so we are often pairing sort of our specialties together on different projects. And yes, that revolves heavily around tourism right now, just because the world is opening up and, people want different, packages or whatnot that they can use to promote or market specific areas. So that number one right now is kind of where, the majority of our business is coming. And then, I've only now within the last year started doing more print publications, but I feel like that is something that I really enjoy and I want to focus more in on.
So when you say print publications, that's magazines and so forth, yeah?
Yes, and they're not honestly always the best paying, are they? Like, I'm sure that you know that.
I've had a couple where it's kind of like, oh, is that it?
Yeah, but there's something about having, I don't know, being able to open up a physical, be like, no, magazine and see either.
Oh, I don't think there's anything
your
better.
Image or writing. There's nothing better. No, yeah. But prints are a tough thing too. There's times where that is booming and times where it's not, but we're actually planning on starting to roll out workshops in the Canadian Rockies. It is a little bit saturated here, but at the same time, there's no shortage of people that are interested in coming. And so, now that we've been here for a few years, it's always been something on our radar. And so we're trying to think more about that and maybe offering something to do with video and something to do with photo too, and probably more around sort of the adventure or sort of more physical or demanding type of photography, not just the roadside events. But to be honest, what I hope to sort of branch more into is video myself. There's always been something to me about like compelling stories, or I don't know, just totally combining all elements of whether it be environmentalism or adventure or these landscapes. That's really something that appeals to me and something that I really hope to transition to into the future. And so it'll be documentative as well as creative, I guess you could say, will be equal hopes, I guess. Yeah.
Sounds exciting.
Yeah.
In terms of the travel that you're doing, how far are you reaching out from the area that you're in Canmore, and are you sort of looking to go further now that things are opening up, or are you going to continue to sort of stay in that area?
I think the hope of course is to continue to evolve and to branch out. And I mean, I've always loved to travel. And so that's, of course, something that I would love to combine with photography. And now that the world is opening up more, it's something that I used to do on my own personal time. But now, running a business, it's something that I really hope to, contribute in as well. And so for the time being, we've been focusing more on mountainous regions. So out west, a lot near, BC, Vancouver Island, and also the northern regions. So we've been spending a lot of time in the Yukon. And to be honest, I would love to go more north. So Baffin Islands. Okay. There's something really special about working within Canada and to be able to, see more of our country. I feel like you always travel out to see different things, but there's so much variety right here on our doorstep. And so while I hope to travel onwards and outwards, I do hope to continue seeing more of Canada. And so northern, yes, but also east, hopefully to Labrador at some point. Okay. Newfoundland. Yeah. Yeah. So there's lots of exciting things in the works. It's just a matter of confirmation and things aligning, but we're sort of chasing different opportunities right now that really excite us. And so, yes, more landscape, more storytelling driven. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So in terms of the environment, have you noticed, particularly around the Banff area and Canmore area, that there's been, with the advent of more people traveling because they've seen it on Instagram, they want to get the shot and that sort of thing. Have you seen, much in the way of damage to the environment?
A lot of disrespect. And I think that the damage will still come to light, I guess you could say. During the pandemic, especially, it was really interesting because, not a lot of international people were coming because they couldn't, but it was our own local people that were spreading garbage, that were defacing different structures. And we do a lot of exploring during the winter. I was saying that earlier. And you would come to these incredible ice caves, and they would be written messages within the walls and just things that really take away from the natural world. And you would see it more and more and more. And I think that's what really sort of eats at me, is when the places are being disrespected and people aren't sort of, using those no trace principles, and when you're finding garbage and different things when they shouldn't be. And I don't know, it's just, it's troubling.
Yeah, I totally get that. Do you think the pandemic has changed your attitude towards traveling and photography?
I feel like I'm fortunate to have traveled a lot before the pandemic happened. And so I feel like I know what it was like to travel in that world, but I don't know what it's like to travel in this new world. It's actually almost, there's a certain level of anxiety that I think that everybody goes through when they travel now. But I don't think in terms of photography and how I capture or plan to capture things has changed much. I still want to see these places because I really crave new experiences and understanding cultures and seeing these landscapes in their best, the best way that you can. So I don't think it's made me more excited to travel again because I haven't gone anywhere since 2019. But I definitely think that, there's a different level of respect that goes with it too, because we were sort of denied that privilege for so many years. And so I think it actually makes it maybe a little bit more special. So I'll have to let you know when I first go to my first international trip. I think it's gonna, hit all the emotions in different ways. So
yeah, I can see that. I'm just gearing up for my first trip in about 4 years, so it'll be interesting.
Where are you going?
Off to the UK. My wife is from the UK, so she hasn't seen her family now for that long. So it'll be a bit of family time. Also heading up the Lake District and North Wales to do a bit of photography as well. So looking forward to it.
Very exciting. Good for you. I'm excited for you. Yeah.
Thank you. Do you have a favourite spot that just keeps calling you back?
There is something about Mount Robson Provincial Park. It's in Berg Lake Trail. Have you heard of that before?
I have, yeah.
It's in British Columbia. And so it's about, I want to say, an hour past Jasper. So about 4 hours away from where I am.
Sure.
And it's a multi-day trek. And I don't know, I've done it at least 5 times now. I don't even know if I've come back with any shots that I'm really proud of, just because the weather, you just never know. But there's something about being there, and just at every turn, the landscape changes and it just keeps getting better and better. You have glaciers and alpine lakes and, one of the highest mountains in Canada being Mount Robson. You've got waterfalls. There's just something really special about that place. And, it's getting busier. I think they do say it's one of the best treks in the Canadian Rockies. And I, don't doubt it for a second. No matter how many times I go back, I can't wait to go back again. And so I think if I had to choose one off the top of my head, that might be it for now.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
What's your most memorable photography experience?
Ooh, that's a good one. Actually, it's not that difficult. Now that I think of it, November 4th, 2021. Wow. So not that many months ago.
What time?
Between midnight and 6 a.m. So, when I first got into photography, it was the Northern Lights that really drew me, right? There was something really special about that. And I've never lost that sort of love and passion for chasing northern lights. It's something that is still with me today. And whenever there's any sort of data or activity that's promising, I'm out there. It doesn't matter if I sleep 1 hour or no hours, like I'm a bit, like I said, I'm a bit obsessive over the things that I really like. I'm kind of full bore and full on.
Yep.
But it had been a few days before, so about a week straight, where the data was looking good. And just where we sit within sort of the Aurora belt, like just at the latitude we're at, like the storms are often in the north, right? They're more in the Yukon, Yellowknife, and it's pretty rare to see a solar storm greater than, let's say, like KP5. Normally it's in that KP3 to KP4 region where you'll see like a bit of green, but not like that full explosion in the sky. But it was on the 5th night, I believe, of chasing, and I almost gave up. And then I decided to go out one more time, and it was a KP8. And so I think that is like a G2 or G3 solar storm. That's something you see in Iceland.
Yeah.
The sky was pulsating. It was the most colorful, like, explosion of light I've ever seen. That was definitely the highlight of my photography career. And so chased for 8 hours straight. Yep. I went to some of them, most of the, just being winter and whatnot, and being, a little bit unprepared. I didn't know that it was going to happen as much as it did. We sort of stuck to the more popular areas, I guess you could say, but at the same time, those are shots that you will never be able to replicate. And so I'm sure you're familiar with Vermilion Lakes in Banff National Park.
Yep.
It faces Mount Rundle. It's a southeast facing feature. And one of my favorite shots I've ever captured is of that night of the Northern Lights absolutely exploding over that. Wow. And so that, they say, is maybe a once in 20 year or, decade type event. Mm-hmm. So to be able to have that in my portfolio is pretty exciting. And I also captured them over Peyto Lake, Lake Minnewanka. And so it was, I don't know, it was very memorable. I don't think I'll ever forget that night. And I don't know if I'll ever see them that strong here again, but definitely kind of brought me full circle.
Fantastic.
Back to the journey, knowing that I'm in the right spot. So, yeah.
How about horror stories?
Horror stories. I feel like I have so many horror stories. I do. I mean, that sort of like goes hand in hand with adventure photography as well as landscape, because you're often, pushing yourself to these physical and emotional brink, and you're braving the elements. And oh my goodness. A couple of years ago, we were trekking out to a glacier. Mm-hmm. So you're up and down and all sorts of elevation. But when I was younger and I was still in university, I tore my ACL playing basketball.
Right.
I had it reconstructed, and it's been quite, hasn't given me much trouble, but I had tweaked it a few weeks before we went out on this mission. And, I didn't really think much of it. I sort of let it heal. I took some time off, and then I was ready for this big adventure. And this is a 20-kilometer backcountry like tour ski into, this.
Not something you should have with a bad ACL.
I retore it on that trip.
Ouch.
And I retore it in the first 3 hours. And I'm so stubborn that I will never, I'm bad to a fault. Like I won't give up. And I think, it's different when you tear your ACL the first time. It's kind of a world of pain, but considering you're tearing through like a graft that was made like that, the pain was there, absolutely, but it wasn't quite at the same level. And so I kind of just continued to go. I knew that it had gone, but I was like, I think I'm okay. I think we're going to be all right. But we ended up staying out there for 17 hours. Wow. So by the time we ended up trekking back, and I mean, this is well into the night, and, you're exhausted, number one, because just the exertion to get to the spot itself, and then trying to find the compositions and the different things that you want to shoot. It was pretty full on. And then, on the way back to the car, that was where it sort of like hit me, it was really a struggle. But it's, I was able to capture some of my most impressive sort of glacier type shots, and it's something I'll never forget. And it's also, just another example of sort of, when you're in the outdoors, you kind of find out what you're made of. And so I was proud of that moment to be able to push through. And not have to make the people that I was with turn around, because that's the other part of it, right? You never want to.
Yeah, you don't want to cause
You know,
somebody else to miss out. Yeah.
and I'm always with the guys, and so you never want to be the weakest link in the group, and so yeah, that was a moment I won't forget, but one of the best photography moments I've had in my career, I think.
Cool.
Yeah.
Talk to me a bit about the planning for some of the, in particular, a multi-day trek. Are you looking at weather conditions months in advance, or are you, doing it on the spur of the moment and saying, all right, looks good, let's go?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we try to book some of the more desired, or if we have a certain shot or whatnot that we hope to achieve. Of course, you look in advance, and there's very short summer season here in the Rockies, and so based on summer or based on fall, you are looking, of course, in advance. But I really feel like the weather systems change so radically here, and so it's mostly sort of last minute. You never know what you're going to get, and sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, we just go anyways because that's part of the adventure. But definitely that's the biggest challenge. But no, I feel like I'm always kind of going out there with some sort of idea of what I would like to shoot. But when you arrive, I feel like when you really survey different landscapes that you've never seen before, like I feel like different opportunities sort of present themselves. And so I often feel like what I aim to capture, what I hope to capture, isn't really the shot that I come back with that I'm most excited about. And so I think it's just leaving that room to be, surprised. But also I just feel like when you're going into these places, a lot of them are kind of more scouting type missions. It really requires the return and, coming back again and again to really sort of know the landscapes and how they sort of ebb and flow with weather and whatnot. So.
Okay. So when you're in the field, are you, what's your process for sorting out which comp you're going to target and which one you're going to go, it's good, but not what I want, or it's the classic, and so I want something different? How do you go about, sorting the wheat from the chaff, I guess?
I don't know. Like I said, I work a lot with color and post-processing. And so I guess, like I don't shoot a lot during the day. I mean, I will for more of the documentive style, images that I like to achieve. But, I'm working mostly with sunrise, sunset, and I do a lot of astrophotography as well. And so normally when I'm in the field, I'm sort of eyeing up during the day what I hope to achieve, with the imagery in those specific times. But certain mountains speak more to me than others, and just like shapes and textures and whatnot. And so I feel like they all have to sort of align to make me really excited about capturing an image. So I feel like that's something that you really discover when you're there. It's something hard to really like describe. There's some planning, but I often, work with what, the landscapes are throwing at me. So.
Okay. Do you have a plump for the classic shot because it's the classic?
Sometimes.
I think we all do.
Like I feel, I don't know, especially when you're returning to some of these places time after time again. Like I do have that classic shot for sure, but it's never really the shot that excites me the most. And so, I've only been shooting now or being, photography for just over 4 years. So it's not that long. And so I still feel like I'm developing, and I still feel like I'm, deciding on what it is that all these things that you're asking. I feel like there's certain things that I'm still discovering about myself. And as I become more versed and as I go out more, I kind of little things sort of present themselves at a time. But I have the classics, but they're not my favorites. Yeah.
No, fair enough. So how did you go about learning your photography, and in particular, I guess, your processing? Was that something that you've sort of spent a lot of time at, trying to pick up the technical tips from various places, or, any formal education or anything?
I did a lot of tutorials, and so I'm not sure if you're familiar with Creative Live, I believe it's called.
Yeah, I am. Yep.
I did a lot of tutorials through that when I was, first beginning. And so that sort of taught me fundamentals and different, how to use like the software, right? And then I think the rest of it was sort of the trial by error and sort of developing your own technique. But um, I'm a bit of a funny, like when it comes to editing, if it's something that's really personal to me, it takes me forever. And I'm a little bit of a perfectionist by nature. And so, nothing's quite ever good enough. And so I sometimes will agonize over images for months at a time. And then sometimes, it comes very naturally and very easily, but I have to be in the right type of mood. I don't know what it is, but editing for me is very, I don't know, I have to be connected to the work and I have to be in that right mindset to be able to sort of bring out the best of what I want it to be.
So it sounds like you're not sort of getting the camera home, dumping them and getting straight into it. You leave them gestate for a bit and think about them before you get into the edits.
I do. There was a time when I first began that I was dumping and editing right away.
Everybody does, I think, when first start.
But now, I feel like it's a much slower process. And, my partner, he dumps and edits the same night and he can turn out an edit within, 10 minutes sometimes. And I'm just like, I like to take my time with it. I like to, let it come to life. It's really interesting how different people work and what they are able to sort of achieve. So, I'm definitely a bit of a slow burn. I like to let them stew a bit.
Cool. Have you ever hit a creative wall? And if so, how did you handle that?
I feel like I did. It was probably a good 6 months where I feel like it had a lot to do with my outside circumstances, how busy I was with work. And there is that period of time where you sort of feel that imposter syndrome, or you feel like maybe the decision that you made to sort of live this lifestyle that wasn't really encouraged or supported by people, might fail. And so I did struggle there for a while. And it was more the outside, I think, occurrences that kind of came into the creative part. And so it's funny, I never stopped shooting. Right. I always would still go out, but I didn't want to edit and I didn't want to produce anything and I didn't want to show anybody. It was all of for me. And I think that it really, I felt better, or I kind of turned came full circle when I moved here.
Okay.
When I finally found a home base, because when I was first left home and travel nursing on the road, I was living out of my suitcase for 3 years and essentially going from one job to the next job to the next job without, I would go home to Manitoba and visit, friends and family now and again, but I would spend most of my time on the road, and I didn't have, you don't have those friendships with you when you're in these new places. You have your work colleagues and whatnot, but you're never really in a place long enough to really formulate those connections, those longstanding connections. And so I think that I was just getting to a place where I was tired and sort of desiring that, settling into one spot kind of feeling. And when I came to Canmore, it was literally within a month that I sort of met this creative group of people that are now some of my closest friends. And I feel like that really turned the corner for me, because not only were they people that were doing this full time, or that, understood what I was trying to achieve with my own goals and my own, dreams, but they supported, they would look at my work and they would critique and they would say, you really need to pursue, or you need to do this, or it was just that helpful sort of like the feedback that you would get from individuals that really sort of helped me, I think. So I'm fortunate, I don't know what would have happened if I would have quit the travel nursing, went back to Manitoba and just worked full time as a nurse. I wouldn't be here. I don't think. I really feel like it was just fortunate circumstances and timing that sort of pushed me on. So
cool. What do you think you've learned about the world through photography?
Oh gosh, seeing beauty, I guess, right, where you don't necessarily see it or look for it before. I don't know, it gives you appreciation for the world as a whole, and just like what we're just so many things are changing so quickly, right? And the population and global warming, like there's so many different things that all come into play with these landscapes. And especially seeing, you know, when we talk about glaciers and, you know, we often are out on these kind of, some of these areas they say aren't going to exist anymore in 50 years.
Sure.
And so this feeling like you're seeing this place for the first time and maybe the last time. And I think it just gives an overall appreciation for what used to be and how the world is changing and how it's affecting these places. And
you talked a little bit about printing. Are you printing yourself, or are you using a print service to create prints for online sales and so forth?
I would love to get into printing eventually, but right now I use other, you know, organizations or companies. I have one actually that I use in Quebec, so right here in Canada, and then there's a couple closer to home that I use as well. But eventually, maybe one day down the road, it would be nice to do your own printing services, but it's just not something I have the time and the commitment to at the moment. So
sure. I think it's a bit of a black art as well, you know, knowing exactly how to prep for printing and so forth.
Definitely. I feel like when you go to these print shops and, you know, speaking to the individuals, like you have to have a real passion for it. And I don't have that. I have it for creating the work, but not for printing it. And so I'll let the experts handle that portion for now. Maybe one day down the road, but for now, not right now.
Yeah. Okay. What do you see as being the biggest challenge facing photographers right now?
Oh my gosh. These are good questions. As a newbie photographer, I don't feel like I'm answering them to the, you know.
Oh, you're doing fantastic.
I feel like in the industry and as a young photographer and being someone that is still evolving, I feel like it's not an easy lifestyle to come by, you know, like it's pretty challenging to get the value for what you're providing sometimes. And I feel like you kind of have to fight tooth and nail for every little thing. And
absolutely.
I think that's the biggest eye opener for me, coming from a stable income and a stable job. And is that how to make the lifestyle work and how to live financially, you know, independently, you know, without having to worry too much about paycheck to paycheck. That's the biggest struggle right now, you know,
finding clients that actually value the work.
Yeah, totally. But otherwise, I'm not sure what else I could say. That, like I said, that's sort of the thing that I'm consumed with the most right now. I feel like it's beginning to happen. And I think that's, you know, time spent, and that's, you know, blood, sweat, and tears, and just building a portfolio around you, right? And also the testimonials maybe from clients and working with you in the past. But my partner's been in it for 15 years, and he still sees, you know, extreme ups and extreme lulls, and it's challenging. I'm sure that you're full time, I would assume, yourself. And so
I am now, since November last year. So
okay, so I feel like you always have to be inventive, and you're always
absolutely,
you really have to think outside the box, and getting that passive sort of stream of income as well, I think, is very helpful. So
definitely.
Yeah.
What's your favorite thing about being a photographer?
I think it's just what I've gone through in my life and what it's taken me to get here. I think it's just this feeling of finally being able to pursue what I'm passionate about. It is, you know, following whatever the calling, that little voice in your head that I ignored for so long. Mm-hmm. I think every time I go out and shoot, it's just, I don't know, this reassurance or confirmation that I'm right where I need to be. Maybe that sounds a little bit cliche, but I love every second I'm out there. I'm shooting almost every other day. And I mean, I've been doing it for 4.5, almost 5 years, but that's never really left me. And so I feel like when you're truly passionate, you truly love something, like, I just feel like that's all there is. And so, you know, it takes me to some of the most incredible places I've ever seen. It pushes me to places that I never would have thought possible, or never really would have thought of, you know, going to before. I don't know. It's an experience all in itself. So I just feel really lucky to be able to have found it and be able to be doing it right now. And just the fact that it's starting to go well. So
That's right.
yeah.
What's your least favorite thing?
My least favorite thing. There's sometimes when you're out on these, excursions that aren't quite fun, when you're getting rained on and when you're stuck in a tent, in a thunderstorm. I hate thunderstorms. And just like, I think it's the elements, right? It really is when you're in the outdoors, especially when you're in landscape, it's not really that much fun sometimes. And I feel like not many people realize that you come back with a pretty picture. And I think it's the most amazing experience of your life, but you might have trekked 100 kilometers in a couple of days to do that. And your feet feel like you're going to fall off and your blisters are bleeding. And I don't know, there's so many different things, right? There's a lot of challenges that go along with photography. And so I feel like sometimes in the moment, I hate being cold and I hate being wet. But when you come back and you look through what you were able to capture, it's sort of, they call it a type 2 type of fun. And in the moment you're hating everything about what you're doing and you ask yourself why, why you do this. And then you come home and forget and decide you want to do it all over again the next week. Yeah.
What do you like to do when you're not out shooting?
I'm still quite physical. I'll do a lot of sports. I still swim. I still, I do a lot of cycling. I think it all revolves around sort of that mountain lifestyle. I do a lot of skiing. I run. I think that's just such a huge part of my life and something I've always been drawn to. And so I always kind of go back to that when I need that kind of rest. So I think that's the biggest thing really, is just sort of keeping active and trying to stay healthy and, making sure that you're spending time on the relationships. Cause I feel like that's something that's also a challenge. And maybe I didn't think of before is, when you're full on with your business and it requires a lot of sacrifices and a lot of kind of compromise. And you really have to focus on maintaining those relationships outside of that world that don't necessarily understand it. I feel like they can fall by the wayside very easily. And so, trying to make sure that you're focusing on that because they're important.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Who are particular photographers that have caught your eye recently that you think I should be talking to on the podcast?
Gosh, I mean, talk about creative vision and somebody that absolutely makes beautiful, visionary work is Cass Samard. But whether you'll be able to actually get her on the podcast.
I've reached out, still haven't been able to snag her yet.
Yeah. And let me think, who else? My partner, I would say, actually, he's quite inspiring. His name's Peter O'Hara.
I get him now. I'm joking.
He's in Nepal right now, actually.
Is he? Oh, okay.
Wow. Yes, he's doing a video project there at the moment. And so with him, he does both photography and videography, but he worked in the television industry for I don't know how many years of his life, and then decided that he needed a change and moved out to the mountains and is sort of like starting brand new again, I would say, because all of his connections are still in the city. And, TV in comparison to adventure or landscape sort of, stories is very different. So he's got a really interesting story and probably a lot of insight and sort of guidance and whatnot to give, especially to new people that are, starting off.
Okay, definitely big things.
People that I can think of. Yeah, there's so many. I could really go on and on, but
that's fine. Yeah. Well, I've only got one more question, and for a lot of people, it's probably the most important one that you can answer. Do you like pineapple on pizza?
Oh my goodness. Why does this question keep coming up? I hate pineapple on pizza, but I'll pick it off. I'm like, it's funny. I'll pretty much eat anything. I'm not really that picky, but I would never order it for myself, but if somebody orders it beside me, that's what I'll do. I'll pick it off and eat it. But I'm not it's a weird one combination. What about you?
I won't order it, but if it's on a pizza, I won't pick it off. So that's fine. If the pizza's there and I'm eating it, I'll eat it.
Pizza's pizza. It's just a fruit, right?
I quite, to be honest, though, it's a uniquely Australian thing, but there's two things you get on a hamburger here that you probably won't see too many other places. And if you get a hamburger with the lot here in Australia, it comes with egg, bacon, cheese, lettuce, no pickles, but you'll get beetroot, and you'll also get a slice of pineapple, which has been fried on the grill with the burger.
Oh, that's kind of neat.
And
That's neat.
yeah, it's a meal in and of itself. Yeah, but
I do remember the beet. It's been a while since I've been to Australia, but I feel like there's beetroot on everything. But I never saw the pineapple on the side. That's an interesting one. We like our pickles in Canada, so
yeah,
I'm more partial to pickles, but
fair enough.
yeah.
Fair enough. Well, it's been wonderful having you on the show, Jenna. Where can people find what you do?
Well, they can find me on Instagram. I'm there at JD Lee. I'm not posting there often, but you can sort of get a general idea of what I love to shoot. And, you know, if you're inspired by mountains, there's a lot of mountains there. I'm on Twitter. I do have a website at hellojennadixonphotography.com.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, maybe in a workshop near you.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again, Jenna.
Thank you. It was really a pleasure. It's nice to meet you.
Thanks. Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show, and keep listening because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work in this podcast at grantswinburnephotography.com. I'm also on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. I'm Grant Swinburne. Hope to see you out shooting soon.